Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. To say that the death of Nolan Wells has occupied space in our common consumption of news is a gross understatement on my part. It has been 24/7. There's people hyperventilating on both sides of the issue, relative to what may or may not happen. However, from my perspective, my humble perspective, as a death investigator, I know that we have to wait because not all the data is in. But we did get a bit of information this past week, and I just wanted to do a quick follow-up with you, my friends.
I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
Brother Dave, there was kind of I didn't see it coming, I'll be honest with you, and I can't remember precisely what day it was, but I saw there was a headline that came across, and it said, "Update, autopsy report complete in the Nolan Wells case." And so automatically, guess what your friend did here? I hopped right on, I clicked the link, and it said, but it's still not available.
Right. Well,
and I know better. I know better.
My phone lit up, text messages, calls. I'm like, hey guys, remember Celeste Rivas?
Yeah.
I mean, that long ago that the autopsy report was done, but we didn't get the results for months. We didn't find out anything for months. And I don't know that the same thing's going to happen here. But Joe, there have been a number of things that have been found out in this time period where we've been waiting on autopsy reports and things like that.
Yeah.
The one thing that drives me crazy is that when you have a person, an 18-year-old young man dies, and you have people coming out of the woodwork to try to make it something else before they find out what really happened, you have a problem. And we have a problem. I thought, and I mean this, Joe, remember Warren Hudson? He went on with the officer. We had him on Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. And Warren Hudson, who's one of Nolan's best friends, has gone on the air on a couple of podcasts, and he's talked about it. Well, the way that it made it sound, right, that Warren's best friend is talking about the trip to Horn Island, talking about what happened out there. He didn't ride out there with Nolan. Nolan Wells did not ride out on the boat with Warren Hudson.
Mm.
There were 3 boats that went out there kind of together. But Nolan was not on that one boat that Warren Hudson was on. The reason I'm saying that is because you have to understand, Warren rode out there on a boat, some guy named Bart that owned it. That a lot was said by family and friends that said, well, if you leave with somebody, you come home with that same person. That's not what was happening. Kids, young people went out there, multiple boats, and they came home, not always on the same boat. And I'm just throwing that out there as it's a small sliver of truth that actually means something, Joe.
Yeah.
I want to know, what boat did Nolan Wells take out to the island, and what boat was Nolan Wells supposed to be on when he came home?
Yeah, or did he perceive, and Lord only knows what Nolan's perception was, because I don't know. You can't be in Nolan's mind. But was there a perception on his part that he was going to be able to hitch a ride with somebody else that was out there?
Mm-hmm.
And listen, I got to tell you, I was not necessarily shocked because, as I've mentioned previously, I'm very familiar with being on islands like this where you can beach a boat.
Mm-hmm.
And, in our little boating community that I'm part of on an inland waterway, there are a couple of islands that we visit that we'll beach our boat on. And dude, and this is in rural Alabama, all right, where we are. There's one island where you can pull up and hang on, let me get the numbers right. I have seen as many as 20 boats around this one island with 20 people either splashing around the water with little kids,
Right.
or the adults are up there drinking and
Mhm.
hanging out.
Yeah.
And you can't, I mean, and I've had people pull up to the island that I don't know, the one that we go to, and they'll just pull up randomly. I don't
Right.
know who they are. It's not like we send each other Christmas cards or anything.
Right.
And I might say, "Hey, how are y'all doing? Do you want a beer? Do you want a bottle of water?" They might say the same to me, and we'll just hang out and we'll talk. And I got to tell you, Dave, I've met people over and over and over like that. I still don't know who they are. I might see their boat on the river. I might wave at them, but it doesn't mean that everybody out there knows one another. And when I
Right.
saw the images that came in,
Mhm.
this was like mass confusion out there.
Well,
And I don't mean it's like chaos
yeah.
because it's a holiday.
Orchestrated chaos.
Yeah, it's kind of, everybody kind of knows where they're going.
Mhm.
But can you imagine trying to keep track of it? It's not like there's a person there with a clipboard
No.
saying, this person's here, this person, where's this person?
Mhm.
It's not like that out there.
And the thing is, only time it gets examined is when something bad happens, Joe. You realize that these young people go to Horn Island to party. It's offshore. They can
Mhm.
have whatever,
Yep.
and they imbibe. And that's something that has come out of this. And I don't want to cast dispersions on anyone's character or anything, but golly gee whiz beef, do you really think a bunch of young people with no adult supervision, 10 miles offshore on Horn Island,
Mhm.
are there drinking Kool-Aid?
Yeah.
And I mean, they're not sneaking cigarettes from grandpa's, carton. They
No.
have their own, and
Yeah.
they're out there doing that. And one of the things that has come up, and if you don't want to be honest about it, then you really don't need to even be in the conversation. But where alcohol, water, and sun are mixed,
Yeah.
you have problems. It affects everybody differently. And some people have said that Nolan Wells was drinking heavily. His mother came out and said, no, he wasn't. He was not. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know Nolan. I don't know anybody that was out there, Joe. I only know what people do and what they have said. So, based on those facts that we know life, but we weren't there, all we have are the autopsy report and the memories of people who will tell the truth and the lies by those who might be trying to cover something up.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lie
And
will
that,
fall
yeah.
apart. And here's how you
Yeah.
tell it.
Well, yeah.
The truth never changes. The truth never changes because it's the truth.
Yeah.
A lie has to change when new facts come out. So follow
Yeah.
that thinking.
Ah.
And what does the autopsy report tell us, Joe?
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. They're saying that they have completed the autopsy, but it hasn't been released.
Right.
And so here's a big tell.
Why
though.
is that? Why is it that it hasn't been released?
I'm about to expand on that. And I think this is the big reveal. Yes, the autopsy report has been completed. And when I say autopsy report, I'm not merely talking about the gross anatomical observations that they see at autopsy, like when we do the examination, the postmortem examination of the body. All right. Does everybody understand that? Okay. It doesn't just include that. It also includes the histology report. What does that mean? Okay. That means that all the little tissue samples that we take at autopsy, that means the doctor has taken those tissue samples. They've been placed on a glass slide. The doctor has sat at a microscope and has looked at each one of those and has written an individual comment about all those tissues. What
do
does
those
that
tissues
entail?
tell you?
Yeah. Well, glad you asked, because this is what they did. All right. Brain tissue. He'll say if it's healthy or if something has happened that he can see with his eyes microscopically. Okay. Heart. They'll look at the heart tissue. They'll let you know if it's healthy or if there was any pre-existing disease. You're saying, man, what does that matter? Well, if you want to do a complete autopsy, you have to look at everything. Yes, I understand that Nolan is young. I also understand that Nolan is a top-tier athlete and his heart should be in fine condition. All right. But you have to eliminate those things that you have no prior knowledge of. All right. Um, lungs. Lungs is a big question here, right? So you're going to want to, first off, take tissue samples, probably multiple. The right lung has 3 lobes, all right? 3 major sections to it, all right? And what you do at autopsy is there are these little cassette, they're called cassettes, all right? So a cassette is it's like a little white plastic thing that has a trap. It's not a trap door, it's a little door. You take a section of the uh, upper lobe of the right lung, okay? You place that into the cassette, second lobe, and you label that. You actually label it with a lead pencil on the outside. And then you take each one of the sections and you drop it into formalin, which is the preservative. So you go through all those, then you go to the left lung. Okay, you take a section of that. You'll take a section of stomach, probably the esophagus, okay, a cross section of it. And of course, I've mentioned previously the samples that you would have taken with his stomach are going to be not just the tissue itself, like the lining of the stomach and the exterior of the stomach, but you're also going to be looking at the content of the stomach, and that would have been collected separately. So the stomach is tied off at the upper end where the esophagus dumps into it. It's tied off at the bottom where it dumps into the small intestine, and you take the entire stomach out, and it's fully inflated. It looks like a balloon when it comes out. Fully inflated, it goes into a separate basin. And within that basin, you open it with a pair of scissors and everything pours out. And when you do, you take a centrifuge tube. It's about that tall, about that big around. It's got a screw-on plastic cap, and you dip like this. You dip the contents and you have them separated. Now, the other thing you're going to do is measure the contents of the stomach. How much is there? Because, when one of the big questions, I think, at least for me, I want to know how long Nolan had been deceased. That's key. People don't talk about that a lot in this case. I think that that's critical. And with stomach contents, let's say let's say he ate a Subway sandwich. I don't know if he did or not, but let's just say a sandwich. Okay. He ate a sandwich. All right. Well, we can measure the amount of time it takes for him to have ingested a sandwich and for it to make in the stomach and to sit there in the stomach, and how long would it take for those stomach contents to make it out. And it's going to be dependent upon what you're ingesting. Okay. So, and there's a whole litany of a huge list that I could go down with the different types of things we ingest and how long it takes to pass through our system. But you don't hear a lot about that. And that's going to be, I got to tell you, Brother Dave, that's going to be a critical finding here. Because let's just say, for instance, if his stomach had dumped into the small intestine and his stomach is empty, other than maybe some non-specific fluid, I'm thinking salt water. I'm also thinking any kind of liquid that he ingested, and you're absent solid food, you can actually put a marker in time on that. And that's going to be critical in this case, because we're not really going to know a lot. We're not going to know a lot about about what went on out there, but it's fascinating to me, and I still love the science of this, Brother Dave. When you have human remains, there are certain things that you can look at that in the postmortem state, that when you look at them, it's almost like you have gone into a cross section of a tree, and you can look at those rings, and the rings will tell you certain things about the life of that tree. There are certain things that we're looking for in this particular case when it comes to Nolan's death that will be markers in time. Dave, as you can tell, that it's to have an autopsy and do the examination of the organs is not something that is necessarily, it's not something that, it's done like that.
Right.
And I always use the term, we live in a microwave world, and we really do. And we're spoiled by that. Um, everything should be done in the immediate. And
Right.
listen, there's nothing new under the sun. I cannot tell you how many times I've had families literally scream at me and say, why is it taking so long?
Mm.
Science. Science doesn't work on your time. It works on its own time. Now, you can have operator error sometime, but it takes a period of time for testing to be done. And we would all like to speed that testing up because we want answers. And listen, I don't know if all the answers to Nolan's case rest completely in the science. We have to rest also in the investigation the police are conducting and try to understand that. But I can tell you, after they got done collecting any info, so we've got, relative to histology, we've got the stomach itself, the tissue there, and also what's contained in the stomach, right?
Right.
Then they're going to go through every other organ in the body, the kidneys. Those will be carefully dissected, looked at, see if they have any kind of disease in them. Microscopically, we're going to check the status on that. His intestines, they will be thoroughly examined. That's going to be important too, because that may hold some answers. We're not really sure. And then, I mean, everything, even the genitalia will be examined. And if you want to go back up, we can think about all the way to the tongue. That's going to be examined. So
Okay.
there will be literally sections taken of all of
Now, Joe, when the second autopsy was done,
it.
the one that was commissioned by Nolan Wells' family through Ben Crump,
Yeah.
there were certain parts
Mhm.
of the throat that were not included in that, and you explained
Right.
that at the time. It bears repeating now because understanding how that would have been used in the autopsy and why it couldn't have been sent to the next one.
Yeah. Well, you can actually use elements of the human body to not only prove things, but to disprove things. Okay.
Okay.
Because, as I love to say about forensics, it's not all about positive findings, it's about negative findings too. So if
Right.
we can demonstrate an absence of something, and you can read this in the oldest forensic text out there about there being an absence. And even when you read modern autopsy reports, they'll see this. And the neck is chief among all things.
Okay.
So the doctor that's doing the examination will actually say, I've examined the strap muscles in the neck, okay? And there's no marked congestion and there's no signs of contusion. The strap muscles are free of petechiae. Then they'll go to the trachea and they'll say the trachea is intact, okay? It's cartilaginous body in here. It's even got little ribs on it. You can feel it right here. And they'll say it's intact and there's not fractures. And I've seen a couple of comments online where people say, you said something about cartilage and it's not bone. How can cartilage fracture? Take a deep breath. Cartilage does fracture, okay? And you can see little fracture lines in it. Where does it come from? Well, it comes from squeezing, okay? Or a direct impact. It can come so they have retained, they being the state of Mississippi, they've retained these features. I believe, and I know for a fact because they've retained the hyoid as well, they may have retained the tongue for all I know, because you can remove it all in one big section and hang
Oh
on to
wow.
it. And so he retained that, the medical examiner in Mississippi retained that for demonstrative purposes. My thing is, when the second autopsy was done, the doctor um, alluded to, I cannot examine the lungs. Well, when he says, I cannot examine the lungs, does he mean that he cannot examine the lungs because they're not intact? Or is he saying the lungs were absent? And that's been floating around a lot too. I've heard people say Well, he didn't have those lungs with him either. Well, one of the problems is, and hear me right, because you're not going to hear this from anybody else. Okay. At least not
Yep.
in probably the podcast world. When we dissect organs, okay, we dissect organs, guess what happens to them? We take the samples that we need, and there's a big trash bag. It's generally set between the legs of the decedent. And all those organs that have been examined, have been dissected, guess what? They all go into the same bag, and they're jumbled up. Now, those organs accompany the body, okay? They accompany the body wherever it goes, whether it's the funeral home or wherever. I suspect that that organ bag went to D.C., and here is why. If you read his report, the second prosector actually stated in there that he's performing histology. What does that mean? Well, just like the docs did in Mississippi, they're looking microscopically. Well, this doctor in D.C. is looking microscopically as well. Well, how's he going to look microscopically at something if he ain't got organs to look at? Now, the problem with not being able to examine the lungs intact, it's really hard to assess drowning if you have lungs that are dissected out, okay? And that means they have been sliced and sliced and sliced. You have to have them intact to appreciate that. So the medical examiner has already made their assessment about that, Dave. And I want everybody to understand that they've already come to a conclusion about the cause of death, or an absence thereof. I'll qualify that.
Right.
But they looked at those lungs intact. What does that mean? Well, when you examine lungs grossly, there's a standard weight, and I need everybody to hear this. There's a standard weight that our lungs are expected to weigh, all right? Depending upon what category. Are you an adult male, adult female, adolescent male, adolescent female, that sort of thing? We have a standard weight that are assigned to each organ. So one of the things they're going to make note of is how heavy are the lungs. Well, if you notice, with drowning, if you notice the lungs are really, really heavy, and this is before you ever do the dissection, that's a clue. We're starting down the path here, our investigative path. Now, when they open the bronchial tree, they will take the lung and they will press on it, okay? And they're going to look for kind of like a frothy exudate that's going to come out, okay? And then when you cut into the lung itself, you'll press it again, and you can see this kind of issuing out as well. And you're looking to see if you've got what is consistent with drowning in that particular state, and you're going to do that assessment, and they'll include that in their report. So it's my opinion that they have already arrived at, I think, at some kind of conclusion that they'll be able to demonstrate that as well, Brother Dave.
It's just amazing to me what you're capable of coming up with, Joe, when we talk about this, because to the layperson, I look at the state did an autopsy, and then there's a second autopsy, and not everything was included, and there must be some conspiracy. There must be something wrong.
Yeah.
But in this case, where the state is going to do an autopsy,
yeah,
they're going to do a complete workup. They're going to do what is the standard for performing an autopsy.
Yep.
Are they concerned with somebody else coming behind them?
No.
Okay, so you're functioning based on, this is my job, this is what I do, and I'm finding my results, and we're moving forward. I don't care what anybody else thinks.
Yeah, and that's the way it should be in science, right?
Yeah, right.
So,
well, science is right or wrong. It's black and white.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, it's like if like Dave, you're, in my opinion, I mean, you certainly know more than I do. You're an audio engineer, right? So if you go in and you set up some kind of complex thing that I have no way of understanding, which I don't, and you're trying to get the right sound and everything, and you understand what industry standard is, like, if you don't do it this way,
Right.
it ain't going to work. And if it does work, it's going to be subpar when you hear
Right.
it. So if somebody came in with the exact same qualifications as you and went in to inspect your work, say there's a lawsuit or something, I have no idea. And they'll say, no, this meets industry standard. I mean, based upon what I'm seeing right here.
Right.
This is critical. And yeah, I mean, and it's not the same as many other things in life because if you're a board certified forensic pathologist, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're in Hayhire, Georgia, or if you're in Juneau, Alaska, if you're board certified, that means that everybody has passed the same board certification. And in order to pass that same board certification, there's a standard that has to be met, and there's a standard that is expected of you in order to maintain your certification. And look, I mean, people vary, the way they do things, all of that. So the doc that does the second autopsy, he actually alludes to this, Brother Dave, in his autopsy report. He has stated in there, look, this is standard. This is standard, based upon what he's seen of the dissection that had previously taken place. So it's not uncommon. Now, I know people say, well, the defense can go out and hire their own, and we're just saying, I'm not saying this about this case. I'm just saying in general, if you've got a criminal case that's being prosecuted, the defense has a right to go out and hire their own forensic pathologist, okay? That'll go toe-to-toe, not necessarily toe-to-toe, but they will be placed on the stand, and they're going to be subject to direct questioning and cross-examination. Here's the rub, and this is where people get a little bit confused, because you can have two scientists that both have equal certifications, and they can look at things and they can say, one can say, this is the way it is. The other person can say, well, it can be that way, but it might be this way. Okay? And they can render their own opinion about that. It all depends on, if the jury is going to buy into it. But for the standard dissection that you're talking about in the case of a young man at this age, where you don't really know what the cause of death is, first off, I am as happy as I can be that the family was advised to get a second autopsy, because I think that, people prattle on about transparency all the time. This is about as transparent as it gets, when it comes down. And listen, they might arrive at a conclusion. I've seen cases where families go out and they retain a private pathologist. Private pathologist arrives at the same conclusion that the original prosector arrived at. There's a lot of dissatisfaction. They might want to have another autopsy done. I've seen that happen. I think I covered a case many years ago that had 4 autopsies that were performed. And, you get to the 4th one, there ain't a lot more you can really do, Right. But I can tell you this guy that did this autopsy up in D.C., based upon what I've read, and I urge everybody out there, this is out there. You can read this. Mm-hmm. I urge everybody to go read this man's report, because as I had previously mentioned, he did a second autopsy that was as thorough as anything you can ask for. It is as thorough as the cases we do, again, on bodies that have died while in custody, which is another level of postmortem examination. But here's the thing. There has been a completed autopsy report, but we still have many, many questions. And guess what? We may even have to wait a while longer. I got to tell you, there's not a lot of things I get excited about anymore. It's one thing out, you see, but when I see a headline like autopsy report completed, we're kind of going back to the beginning here.
I thought you were saying mint chocolate chip ice cream.
Oh my gosh, I know, man.
Sorry.
Oh Lord.
I apologize.
Don't start. You're the devil, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. All right, so autopsy report completed. Got you.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I was left wanting, to say the very least. And I should have seen. I've been doing this long enough.
Yeah.
Shame on me. Fished in. So and it's not. It is complete.
Yeah.
But it's not for our viewing at this point in time.
And it shouldn't be, Joe. At this point, if we truly care about justice, if knowing the truth, you do realize that sometimes sadly, sometimes people die and it is an accident. Now, there
Yeah.
might be somebody to blame. Friends didn't keep close enough contact with their friend, or, this very well could be explained away as we thought he was riding home with somebody else.
Yeah.
Maybe, because that has been what has been said. I mean, I had a rule with my kids, about when you leave the house, be the driver. That way, nobody else is in charge of where you are and when you are there.
Yeah.
Short of that, you're now at somebody else's mercy. That doesn't mean that something happened on purpose. It doesn't mean that murder happened on Horn Island. I'm not saying it didn't. I don't know what happened on Horn Island. All I know is there's an 18-year-old young man who is dead, who ought not be dead. And the very people that were out on that island don't know what happened either.
Yep.
Joe, three of the guys, Warren Hudson being one of them, they've had to get attorneys because they're getting threatened by people. They went out to Horn Island with their new attorneys to take a look around. I don't know what they plan on seeing on Horn
Yeah.
Island. You've been out to, isn't there a stretch of these barrier type islands that
there
goes all the way from Alabama to Mississippi?
Yeah. There are actually back into Louisiana. There's actually the
Because you're
I'm gonna
very
get it wrong. I
familiar
think the
with these
Chanticleer.
types of islands,
Yeah, I'm
right?
very familiar with the barrier islands. And you guys have them off of North Carolina
Yeah.
as well.
Oh, yeah.
And they're unique places. They really are. And it's places that locals go,
Mhm.
that are skilled at getting there and know
Right.
the equipment you need to get there.
10 miles
And
off the coast, man.
it's a poke, man.
Yeah.
People think, 10 miles. It's not like hopping in your car and driving
No.
down to the grocery store. 10 miles over open Gulf water.
Yep.
You better know what in the hell you're doing when you get out there, and you better have functional equipment when you
Yep.
get there, because you never know, what's going to happen. It's not like you can hop off the boat and swim to shore. It's not
Right.
like that. Yeah, there are people that could swim 10 miles over open ocean, but they're star, athletes. But to that point, the one intriguing thing about what has developed concurrently with this notification we've been given about the autopsy report being completed, which, by the way, just so we all understand, I believe that if they're saying it's completed in the sense the actual physical autopsy report, what they saw there, the histology report, which I kind of got sidetracked with, the tissue toxicology, it's going to be completed. Okay. And then if there was a radiology consult, where they x-rayed his body when they got him in, if they had to get an x-ray consultant to come in, like a radiologist, and any kind of, if there was like a neuropath where they're looking at the brain, that sort of stuff, they're saying it's complete. All right. It's complete. So that means that all the elements are there. You're not waiting on something else. So why aren't they releasing it? Well, concurrently, they've also announced that the prosecutor is going to a grand jury.
Mm-hmm.
Now, immediately when you hear going to a grand jury, they want to further explore whether or not there is significant evidence to move forward with a criminal case. All right, just let that settle in just for a second. And the way, and I've testified before grand juries, and the way this works, first off, you don't have a defense that's in there. All right. This is a prosecutor presenting all of the evidence that they have to voting members of an impaneled jury, and they were either going to do, I think, one or two things. They will either true bill it or no true bill it. And true bill it means, yes, there are indictable offenses here. We're going to move forward. We recommend to the prosecutor that you move forward with this case. And that's where we're at. So I think that in addition to people saying, oh, wow, they completed the autopsy report, there was a second, oh, wow moment when they said, going to a grand jury.
Mhm.
And and you never know how long that's going to take. I would imagine, as much heat as there is on this case. Um, and I hate to say it this way, I don't know if they're going to make a political decision and try to take the temperature down, or, just to do this. I don't know what their motivation is for doing it. I have no idea. I don't know if they know something that we don't know, because we don't know everything.
No, we
Nobody
don't.
knows everything out there except for the investigators that have been involved in this case, who they've interviewed, what kind of statements they've gotten, what kind of behaviors took place, that sort of thing. And all of that is going to be brought in. And here's one really interesting thing, Brother Dave. We were together on a program the other day, and you know how I talked about that mass of boats out there?
Yeah.
There were those long registration numbers that, if you've never been around boats, they have this long, almost like a license plate.
Right.
Okay. And it's got a specific identifier. If it's Mississippi, it starts off MS. If it's Alabama, it'll be AL, and it's followed by a series of digits. Well, those are all traceable.
Mhm.
So they're going to have videography of every boat that's out there. And what they're going to do, I would imagine, is they're going to track down the owners of each one of those boats.
Yeah.
And you're going to have a guy showing up at your house with a badge and a gun and a notebook. And they're going to say, "Why don't you go on in here and have a seat?" They're going to want to sit down and have a discussion with the people about what they saw. And they're also going to want to know, because, in Nolan's case, where this boat that he's alleged to have gone out on, that wasn't that kid's boat. That
Right.
was his grandpa's boat. All right. So you might have other circumstances like this, because these boats, Dave, as you well know, are very expensive boats. When you start going off 10 miles, I'm not going to take my little putter that I have and go 10 miles offshore with it. You have to have robust boats. That requires rather substantial motors, and the vessels themselves have to be able to make it out there. So these boats are not cheap. No boats are cheap. These boats are certainly not cheap.
Understand that the experience level with these boats is that they also are members of a club where, when they have a problem with the boat, they can call the tow line and that they will get help. I mean, that's how important this is. And that's why you've got to understand that I've got real questions about the audio that was released. Okay.
Yeah.
Real big questions about that. But I don't know the answers. I just know that there is a solution to this. It might be explainable. It might not. I don't know. I just know that I'm glad they're going to take it before a grand jury. I'm glad that all of this evidence that they're collecting will have its light of day, because remember, at a grand jury, you're not getting anything other than what the prosecution has. You're not getting, the defense doesn't get to say, "Well, I can explain why that cigarette butt ended up in my trash can." Okay.
Yeah.
You don't get that. It's just there was a cigarette butt in his trash can.
Right.
And that's all. So I'm glad they're doing that, because that's how you move things forward. Let's just get everything on the table, man. Leave nothing. Look, there's way too much at stake to allow for anything to slip through the cracks. Get everything up on board, get it all in front of a group of people who can be held accountable, and then let's find out what happened.
Well, I can say this. I feel as though the scientific community, to this point at least, has done what they're supposed to do. They've completed their reports. We've also got a second autopsy that has been completed. And to be very public, it has been released, and a tip of the cap for that. Let's see what all the other players do in this case as we move forward, because like you, I don't have all the answers. And I don't know that anything will ever be answered to everyone's satisfaction. However, we wait on the truth and for it to come out, and we'll see how that truth is actually handled moving forward.
I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.